Shalom Aleichem. We will continue now with the study of Pirkei Avot. We are in chapter 5, and we have done 7 Mishnayot, and now we will begin with Mishnah Het, number 8. And by the way, I just would like to remind everyone that there are other editions in which you will find that the numbers are different. For example, in some books, what is Mishnah number 8 today, in this edition, it could be in another edition number 7 or number 6. All right? 10 דברים נבראו בערב שבת בין השמשות. There are 10 things that were created on the eve of Shabbat. That's Friday afternoon. Ben Hashmashot means at twilight, a little bit before Shabbat, before the beginning of Shabbat. In fact, Ben Hashmashot, the twilight, the Jewish law says that it is a safek, it is a doubt whether it is night or day. That's why for when it comes to matters of Shabbat, when it is already twilight, right, about 18 minutes after Shki'ah, so it's already Shabbat, even though you still think it is day. Okay. So now there are 10 we said that this Mishnayot on this chapter, they begin always with a number. So far we have done 7 Mishnayot, beginning each one of them with number 10. This one also will begin with 10. Asarat Varim, there are 10 things that were created on Erev Shabbat, on the eve of Shabbat, at the time of Ben Hashmashot. That means at twilight, a little bit before clear Shabbat. Ve'eluhen, and these are the ones. Number 1, Pi Haaretz. If you remember the story of Korach, when they angered very much Moshe, so Korach and all his assembly were swallowed by the earth. And it says in the Torah, "Vatiftach haaretz et piha," and the land, the earth, opened up its mouth and swallowed about 250 followers of Korach, including Korach and all his congregation. Now that means that there is to the earth, there is a mouth. When it opens up, that's when an earthquake or an eruption could happen, right? So that kind of mouth of the earth was created on Erev Shabbat. The second thing was Piha Be'er. If you know, there is such a thing as Be'er Miriam. There was a well that followed the Jewish people in the wilderness when they were 38 years in the wilderness before they entered the land of Israel. There was what we call Be'er of Miriam. Miriam's, the sister of Moshe, had a well, or the well that is known as the name of the well was Be'er Miriam, right? And that's where they were able to drink water, by the way. And that means it's another miracle, because in the wilderness you cannot find such a thing. By the way, today they say that some people saw the well of Miriam in the Kinneret, but nobody can point to anything because it is a tradition, but could be considered as a legend by others, but we believe in our traditions. So the second thing that was created on Erev Shabbat at twilight, all the things that we are going to learn are things that are unnatural, not natural at all. So they are within the range of a miracle, no question about it. So the mouth of the well of Miriam was also created at that time. There is another mouth, and that's the third thing that was created on Erev Shabbat, the mouth of the donkey of Bil'am. The donkey of Bil'am, if you know, that when Bil'am rode his donkey, suddenly the angel appeared, but he wouldn't be able to see the angel, but his donkey saw it, right? And she didn't move, no matter how much he hit her, until she spoke to him. She opened her mouth and she spoke like a human being, and she said, "Why do you hate me? Haven't I served you well for all the years?" And that's when he realized that there is an angel before him, and he was sorry for it. So the mouth of this does not occur every day. You never saw a donkey who talks, but this one did. And that was a special creation on Erev Shabbat at twilight. Also, number 4, of those that were created on Erev Shabbat at twilight, HaKeshet, the rainbow, right? The rainbow. When did the Torah speak about the rainbow? After the flood in the time of Noah, which destroyed the whole world, right? And then the Keshet, the rainbow, appeared, and that's when we are reminded of what happened during the Mabul, that is the flood, and this was a promise that God will never use again such a terrible thing, the flood, to destroy the earth, right? So the Keshet, the rainbow itself, is a special creation. It's so beautiful to see. In fact, we are not allowed to gaze at it. Why? Because it's like looking at the divine presence. And we are not allowed to do that. If you do that, you might cause your eyes not to dim up, which means not to see well. So the Keshet, which is the rainbow, was created on Erev Shabbat at twilight. Also, number 5, another creation that was special because of the fact that it is so unnatural. Haman, the manna that came down for 38 years to the Jewish people when they were in the wilderness after they left Mitzrayim. When they started to complain, how are we going to survive? We need bread, we need food. So Hashem made sure that the manna came down from heaven. It was like a piece of cake which had, according to our tradition, it had all the taste that you want. You want a steak, so depending on your faith, of course, you could also taste the taste of steak or anything that you like. This was the manna. That was a special creation which is not a natural one, and this was created on the eve of Shabbat at twilight. Also Hamateh. Hamateh is the staff of Moshe. Moshe, despite the fact that Hashem is the one who commanded him to do this and that, and all the plagues that fell upon Egypt were, of course, when the Jewish people looked upon Moshe, they looked at him hitting the staff and saying, "Let this happen," like he did with the splitting of the sea. The splitting of the sea, he raised his staff, and then, of course, the sea split. So that staff was something that is unusual, unnatural. It's not like any piece of wood. It was a miraculous one, and there is much to talk about it. And it was created on the eve of Shabbat at twilight. Also, Hashamir. Hashamir, it's a worm. The Shamir worm. And that worm, I don't know if it exists today or not, I don't think so, but it did exist in the time of King Solomon, for example. Our sages said that how did he use, because it was forbidden to use steel iron in order to build up or to cut the stones with which to build up the walls of Bet HaMikdash, of the great temple of Jerusalem, right? So since barzel, which means iron, cannot be used, so how are you going to cut those big stones, huge stones? But there was a special creation that helped King Solomon to do the job. a little worm. That worm, it was like it had rays, and with that, you saw the splitting of the stone in such a precise way that there is no other invention that can do the same. That shamir, that worm, was created on the eve of Shabbat. Of course, which Shabbat, by the way? Not any Shabbat. The eve of Shabbat of the first Shabbat, the creation, at the time when God created the world. So finally, on Friday, He created man. At the same time, towards twilight in the evening, that's when He created those 10 things. Also, HaKetav. Ketav means the script. You have to understand that we know how you write Aleph in Hebrew, or Bet, Gimal, Dalet, He, Vav. But who gave those forms? Who said that Aleph should look this way? Who knows? I mean, it's unbelievable. Well, you should know that script that we all know, that is so popular by every Jew, that you have in your books, the printing of your books and everything, those letters, the script, the kind of writing itself was created on the eve of Shabbat, the first Shabbat of creation, on the eve of Shabbat at twilight. And then, HaMichtav. HaMichtav is what? Also it has to do with the script, but it is the writing of the tablets of the law. Those writings were miraculous. Like, for example, the Talmud says in Masechet Megillah that how did he write? Because it was the writing of God. Only the second tablets, you remember the first tablets were broken by Moses when he came down from the mountain and he saw the Jewish people committing the terrible sin of the golden calf. That's when he took those tablets, the first tablets that he received from God himself, and he broke them. Now, the writing of those tablets were performed by God himself. Because the second tablet, when after God forgave the Jewish people, after the plea of Moshe, and he prayed so much for them, and he got the forgiveness of the Jewish people, then he went up again. And then he brought the second tablet. Those second tablet, God said to Moshe, you write them, you sculpt them. So which means you have to understand that there is a tremendous difference between the first tablets of the law and the second tablets. The first tablets of the law, if we receive them, there would be no death among the Jewish people. It would be a different kind of Jewish people. But God wanted it to be this way, and they committed the sin of the Egel, which practically spoiled everything, and we became like any normal human being. But imagine that the Torah that we could have received in the beginning would have been a tremendous, a terrific Torah that is unequal to the Torah that we have today, brought by Moses, of course, for the second time when he came down. That Michtav, so we said that those writings that were written, not exactly the script. The script, we already said, it was also a miracle that was created on the eve of Shabbat. But also the Michtav itself, the inscription, and the tablets of the law themselves, that was created also. It was not just any tablets, it was not any stone. Our sages said that when Moses broke the first tablets of the law, so they became, of course, broken. So those pieces were made of a certain matter that we call saperinun, the kind of diamond that represented a fortune. And that's how Moshe became extremely rich, from the little fragments of the first tablets of the law. You have to understand, one of the things that I wanted to tell you is that the Talmud in Masechet Megillah tells us that some of the script of the letters that were written on the first tablet of the law, the Ten Commandments, they were practically flying, because if you engrave them in the stone, how can you engrave, for example, let's take Samach. The letter Samach is rounded, and it says in the Torah, Ketuvim mishene evrehem, mikan umikan. which means you could see the letters from this side and also from the reverse side. How could this be when it comes to writing samach? Samach is one round. But, which means when they were engraved, they were in the air. So that's exactly the point. You saw them like in the air, the letter samach. There's much more to say about this, but that's another issue. So the Pirkei Avot says that there is another thing that was created on the eve of Shabbat, and that is Yesh Omrim Af HaMazikim. Some say, there are opinions that say that even the evil forces, like the devils, were created on the eve of Shabbat, which means our sages said that, for example, the devilish forces, the Shedim, they were created on the eve of Shabbat, which means at the time their creation was not completed. So they are not with the full form. That's why they don't appear to us. We cannot see them, but they can hurt. They can hurt a lot. And there are so many stories in the Talmud about places where the location of Shedim, evil forces, devilish forces. So those all, they are known as mazikim, destructive spirits. So that they were also created on the eve. Why? Of course, you should ask a question. Why is it that they were important for the creation to be created? What do you mean? If they are only for spoiling and destroying things, maybe God why did He have to create them? Only He did not complete their shape. That's why they cannot be seen, which requires explanation, of course. The answer is that they were needed because the Zohar HaKadosh says, as God created the forces of saintliness, God also created the same levels, the same degrees of forces of evil. So they counter each other, and now depending on our deeds, which force can dominate. If we do the right thing, the mitzvot, every mitzvah that we do, every tikkun that we do, that can bring power to the side of saintliness and purity to overcome the other side, the bad side. God created all this because He decided that human beings should behave with free will, which means if you want to be evil, you can be evil. Nobody will stop you from committing bad things. Of course, at the end you have to pay for it. But right now you can do anything you want. Why? Because the main reason why God created the world and created us is so we will overcome. Of course there are temptations. Of course, let me interject here a little matter. Homosexuality. Now, so many people say, what can you do? I mean, they were born like this. Most of them are not born like this, by the way. That's especially when there is affluence, riches and everything. So they have they have tasted any kind of temptation, and now they need more. And that's why they go to this. But we have to admit that there is a certain percentage, maybe 2%, that are homos. Now you might say you cannot condemn them, you cannot judge them. So how come the Torah regards the sin of homosexuality as the worst of an abomination, it says? Well, the answer is, what do you think? We are all full of temptations. Everyone has temptations. We have evil inclination. Yetzer hara dominates. It's so strong that our sages said that if God does not help us, it's impossible to overcome the evil inclination, Satan. So, same thing also. You desire a beautiful married woman, and she is willing and everything, but you have to stop. Yosef HaTzadik did it, right? When the wife of Potiphar, the beautiful, one of the most beautiful women on earth, when she fell in love with Yosef, she tried very much to tempt him and to bring him to her. No. He objected and he did everything to overcome his temptation. And don't tell me he did not have temptations. Our sages said things that are difficult to explain, that he almost did it, but he held himself back. And that's exactly the function of every Jew. That's why the Shulchan Aruch, I always say that the book of Jewish law begins with the word Hitgaber. You have to overcome. So, same thing also with the problem of homosexuality, they have to overcome. Like we have to overcome every kind of sinful temptation. Well, so that's why God had to create those forces. I mean, those forces are tremendous in their power, and it is our job to overcome them. We have also the good side in the body, in our neshama, and we have also the bad side. Now, who's going to win depending on you? We all have temptations, and most of the time we do win. We do. The ones who is willing to fight, God will help him to win. And that's the whole point. That's the secret of the mitzvah, the Torah, everything. Imagine if we were not given free will in the world, we would be considered like animals. I mean, animals have no evil inclination, they have instinct. Even the worst of them does not do it because he is bad. You cannot say that the tiger is bad. That's his instinct, that's the way God created him. But God created us with a will. You can overcome. All you have to do is to do your best. Instead, a person wants to rely on his natural intention and his temptation, and he wants all kinds of pleasures. You have to overcome. That's why we have to learn Torah, to give us more power over the evil inclination, like it says in the Talmud in Masechet Kiddushin, Im paga becha menuval ze moshchehu levet midrash. If that awful evil inclination comes to you, take him with you to the house of study of Torah, because the Torah is a tremendous power over that. That's not decisive. You still have to do everything you can, right? Ishtadlut, as it says. Also, another thing was created at the time of twilight, on Erev Shabbat, of the time of creation. The grave of Moshe, ukvurato shel Moshe. I mean, when Moses died, he was not buried like everyone else. He went up to the mountain of Nevo, and that's when God buried him. And that's why it says in the Torah, Velo yada ish et kevurato ad hayom hazeh. Until today, we don't know where is the grave of Moshe. Why is that? Our sages said, because imagine, if he was created, if he was buried like everyone, then his place would become a place of worship. People would forget about God. They would all come to the grave of Moshe and think that that's God. To avoid that, God did not let anyone know where Moshe is buried. But still, he had a burial place. That burial place was created on the eve of Shabbat, before Moshe was born, right? On the eve of Shabbat, it was already ready before twilight. Ve'elo shel Avraham Avinu. Here is another thing that was created on the eve of Shabbat at twilight. The ram of Avraham Avinu. Remember, Avraham Avinu was commanded to take his son Yitzchak and to sacrifice him. After he raised his knife and everything and he was about to slaughter him, then the angel appeared and he said, hold it, Avraham. You did your best. God bless you. Fine. You have succeeded and you won the test. But who is he going to sacrifice now? He needs a replacement. Suddenly a ram appeared which was entangled in the bushes, and that's how Avraham knew that this was designated to be sacrificed instead of Yitzchak. That ram was created after the 6 days of creation at twilight on Erev Shabbat. ויש אומרים אף צבת בצבת עשויה, and some say tongs, the tongs that you need with which to hold a plier, like that you need to hold heavy things. So it says tzvat, it's called tzvat, the tongue, T-O-N-G. That was made with another tongue. I mean, in order to produce a tongue with the fire, you need the fire and everything, but you need to hold it with another tzvat, right? So who gave us the first tzvat? Let's say every kind of tongue that you have was preceded by another tongue. Otherwise, you wouldn't be able to hold it with the heat, right? So okay, you go till the first one. He didn't have in the beginning any tongue with which to create a tongue. So that was created on the eve of Shabbat. Of course, this is a philosophy to teach us that everything that is in this world, you have to ask what caused him. You know, science, of course, debates that. They have a reason behind everything. But Habibi, tell me, how was the first one, the first thing that is created, what made it come? You say evolution, you say this, you say that, but what was the first thing? Well, I leave it up to you to think about it. We still have another Mishnah for today. Mishnah number 9. Oh, we'll see. Shiv'a devarim begolem. There are, now we go to number 7. We finished number 10, right? We learned 8 Mishnayot with number 10 displayed first. Now we are going to begin Mishnah Tet Shiv'a with the number 7. So we leave it to a coming lecture. God bless you and be well.